In the shadowed halls of Renaissance Florence, amidst political conspiracies and the ceaseless clamor of power-hungry nobles, Niccolò Machiavelli penned words that would echo across centuries. His observations were sharp, unapologetic, and devoid of sentimentality. In a world driven by ambition, betrayal, and survival, Machiavelli was not interested in how the world ought to be, but in how it truly was. One of the most subtle yet powerful lessons in his work is this. The act of explaining yourself is often a trap, a performance of weakness disguised as an attempt at clarity. To explain oneself, to justify one's decisions, thoughts, or actions, may seem noble, even virtuous. Yet in the Machiavellian worldview, it is a telltale sign of insecurity. It is an opening, a crack in the armor that invites scrutiny, doubt, and manipulation. A man who is truly powerful does not explain. He acts, and his actions speak for themselves. Authority is not a dialogue. It is a declaration. And when one feels compelled to explain, it means they are already losing control of the narrative. In the human theater of influence and dominance, perception trumps truth. The powerful man knows this instinctively. He does not waste breath trying to align others with his inner logic. To explain is to relinquish power, to reveal the uncertainty behind the decision, to suggest that consensus is needed. But power is not democratic. It is silent, poised, and self-assured. Machiavelli observed that the prince, the ideal ruler, must learn to be both fox and lion. The lion uses brute strength, while the fox uses cunning. Explaining oneself neither aligns with the strength of the lion nor the cunning of the fox. It is the act of the sheep, the unsure, the appeaser who wishes to be understood rather than obeyed. And to seek understanding from others is to admit, in some way, that their approval matters more than your intent. There is a primal law in human behavior. People do not follow what they understand. They follow what they respect, what they fear, what they're in awe of. Charisma is built not through transparency, but through mystique. The man who does not explain becomes a puzzle. And the more one becomes a puzzle, the more others are drawn to unravel him, to speculate, to gossip, until speculation itself becomes power. In the digital age, where everyone is encouraged to explain, post, share, and apologize, the rare person who does none of these stand out like an obelisk in a field of glass. His silence is interpreted as depth, his unresponsiveness as strength. People begin to project narratives onto him, stories of purpose, of control, of mysticism, because he does not interrupt their imagination with his justification. Let us step back into the courtly intrigue of Machiavelli's time. If a prince executed a political rival and explained that it was for the greater good, he invited judgment. He invited the populace and the court to dissect his reasoning, to agree or disagree, to debate. And in that debate, power slips. But if he acted decisively, offered no justification, and let the fears settle like dust in the hallways of power, he remained untouchable. The message was clear. This is the way things are. Explanation would have tainted the act. In silence, it became legend. Now imagine a modern parallel. A leader, a CEO, a man of status, makes a controversial decision. If he explains, he exposes the gears behind the curtain. He tries to play both God and man, both decisive and apologetic. The result? He is seen as weak. The very explanation becomes the focal point of criticism. But if he says nothing, if he lets a decision stand and moves on, the world is forced to interpret. And in interpretation, ambiguity becomes authority. In relationships, too, the Machiavellian principle applies. When a man constantly explains himself to a partner, he is signaling a fear of being misunderstood. And that fear is a crack. It signals that his internal world is at the mercy of external validation. True attraction, true emotional gravity, arises from calm self-possession, from the silence of a man who does not need be explained because he simply is. The human psyche is drawn to mystery. From ancient mythologies to modern celebrity, the unknowable is always revered more than the known. The man who explains himself too much becomes familiar, predictable, boring. The man who leaves space for mystery becomes magnetic. He is not a character in someone else's story. He is the author who decides when and if to speak. Machiavelli understood that human nature is not benevolent. It is opportunistic, selfish, and rooted in perception. If people believe you are weak, you are. If they believe you are strong, you become so in their eyes. Power is perception sculpted into belief. And every time you explain, you chip away at that sculpture. Consider the art of negotiation. The one who speaks least holds the most power. The one who explains their position reveals their cards. The other smiles, listens, calculates. The true Machiavellian speaks only what is necessary. Every word is currency. Explanations are not currency. They are debt payments. They come from a position of owing something to the listener. Imagine again a battlefield. One general explains a strategy to his soldiers in exhaustive detail, hoping to earn their understanding. Another simply says, "We march at dawn." The latter is remembered. The former is debated, questioned, undermined. Confidence is not built through explanation. It is built through resolve. Even in the arts, this rule applies. The greatest artists, thinkers, and philosophers rarely explain their work. They let it breathe, let it live, and the world assigned it meaning. Da Vinci's Mona Lisa remains captivating not because it is understood, but because it never was. The enigma gives it life. To explain is to reduce the mystery. It is to hand over the narrative to others. In Machiavelli's world, and in the world today, the one who holds the narrative holds the power. And when you explain yourself, you surrender the pen. Think of how kings ruled. Did Caesar explain himself to his enemies? Did Alexander justify his campaigns? Did Napoleon pause to clarify every decision? No. Their actions were the explanation. Their results were the justification. If you succeed, the world will explain for you. If you fail, no explanation will ever suffice. The truly Machiavellian man understands that silence is a weapon, that withholding is more powerful than revealing, that the less he says, the more others say about him, that to maintain power, one must resist the urge to be understood, because to be understood is to be vulnerable. And in the ruthless game of power, vulnerability is a liability. In moments of criticism, the average man explains. The Machiavellian man watches. In moment of conflict, the average man defends. The Machiavellian calculates. In moments of chaos, the average man justifies. The Machiavellian acts. He knows that silence creates space. And in that space, others fill in the gaps with stories that serve him. This is not to say that all explanation is weakness, but it is to say that most explanation is unnecessary. That the desire to be seen as right often eclipses the need to simply be. And when you step beyond the need for validation, you step into power. So remember, never explain, never justify, never seek to be understood. Act, decide, move. Let the world try to catch up.